Hello and welcome to Luapula Quest. Today on Luapula Quest we are looking at cassava and how the crop has helped the people in Luapula province to earn a living. As you might be aware, cassava is one of the most commonly grown crop in the province. And I'm privileged today to be joined by Mr. Gerard Serenje, a researcher from the Zambia Agriculture Research Institute. Mr. Serenje, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, thank you.
To begin with, tell us about your institution, the Zambia Agriculture Research Institute, and perhaps your mandate.
Thank you very much. ZARI, or Zambia Agriculture Research Institute, is a department within the Ministry of Agriculture in charge of research. Before being called ZARI, it used to be called the Soils and Crops Research Branch, but now it's called the Zambia Agriculture Research Institute. Our mandate is to conduct research in crops and soils. So as ZARI, we have research stations dotted around the country in all the 10 districts, all the 10 provincial centers. So meaning that we have a research station, our headquarters in Chilanga, we have one in Solwezi, we have one in Mansa, we have one in Cassava, we have another one in Chipata, and all these other provinces. Yeah. So as ZARI, our mandate basically is to generate research products, is to generate agricultural technologies that are suitable to farmers. And when I'm talking about farmers, I'm talking about all categories of farmers, meaning that we're able to take care of technologies for small-scale farmers, we're able to take care of technologies for medium-scale farmers, we're also able to take care of technologies for large-scale farmers. But our major clients are small-scale farmers, because that's where we found that small-scale farmers, a lot of them are lacking information because of these other categories of farmers are able to get information, but our small-scale farmers are lacking where to get information. So that's where we're coming in to fill in the gap.
As I mentioned in the preamble, cassava is one of the most grown crops in the province. And looking at your mandate, what are you doing to ensure that this crop is promoted in the province?
Here in Luapula, we are working very well. Like I said earlier on, ZARI is dotted in all the provincial centers, meaning that here in Luapula, we are only in Mansa. But if you look at Luapula, Luapula has several districts, meaning that we don't have to work on our own. We don't have to work in silos. We have to work with other partners. So for us to fulfill our mandate, as ZARI, we are working with extension, agriculture extension, meaning that we are working with DACO's offices in all these districts. The DACO's offices are the ones who receive problems from the farmers, what the problems which the farmers are facing. And when those problems are received, those problems are shelved to us as ZARI. And then we're able to tackle those problems together with the DACO's offices.
Good to hear that you are working with the farmers. What are you doing in terms of yields? I guess there are new varieties and old varieties used to give different. Are you doing anything to ensure there is good yields from these farmers that you continue engaging?
The first thing that we are doing, looking at our mandate, is to conduct research. So there are some varieties that we've had which have been there for a long time. And those varieties, some of them, our farmers still have them. But there are some varieties which we are developing now, which we are hoping that they can reach the farmers. In our development of those varieties, we are working with farmers. What we do in our research, we do not just research at the research station, What we do is that when we do the research at the research station, we have to take those materials to the farm so that those materials, our farmers can also do the research, help us to collect data on farm, so that the variety that we are going to have, the information that will come out of there is information that will be authentic. When I talk of a variety which can grow well here in Luapula, in Mansa in particular, that same variety should be able to grow well in Kawambu. That variety should be able to grow well in another district of Luapula. So that's how we are working with farmers.
Well, so insightful. Our reporter, Kenneth Chomba, took time to talk to a woman who has been in the business of cassava for 28 years. Let's join Kenneth Chomba as he brings us this report.
Luapula province is one of the provinces known for cassava growing, as nearly every household in most parts of the province has a cassava field. This makes cassava to be one of the province's most consumed crop. However, to others, the crop is also helping them to earn a living through the selling of cassava. Hilda Kunda is one such person who earns a living through the sale of fried cassava and has been in this business for over 28 years now.
About 17 years. Kasukulu abatamunshira bama offices nabenda pepa misewo bonzwesa mukitatuti nawo pave kulusaka wesa mukitatuti pano pe.
Hilda has been able to achieve a number of things through our cassava business.
Kutotralisa nisambirisha mu abana ninkulamo nenganda na shere kwa bulenga ndera bame bandi bafuire. So ninkulamo nenganda na likule kwenganda ali na volume. So mkwikala nalundako amalu mzadi 5 pachapi afika pa window level nshira pusho mando kati uno mwaka wa 2023 business ili yako sakosa kwa mlandu wako ya timpia na shishuka.
She also has a word for her fellow women who are not involved in any business activities.
Na mayo uliwonse tete kalipanga ndoko kwa business ili yonse pantu ya enina wa abana bali abana bo tukwata limwa bamewe bakwata pamayanda bano afyobwalwa bambi bekala fyeno bana mayo alikwata uluse lwa kusungira mu abana ukuikala pita pabana ngchimwe chibamo patwishwa wamba pyo kuiposa ika nangwalambo okuiba nangwalambo kutemsango yonse nomba tefe na maya kwiri okuba na maya kwiri pyo kuichinchi omwine.
Hilda has plans of growing a business if only she can have access to a grant under the various empowerment programs in place. Kenneth Chomba, reporting in Mansa District, Luapula Province.
Interesting story there. Now, Mr. Srenje, we have seen how some people are earning a living through cassava. What are some of the advantages which this crop has over other crops?
That's a very good question. I'll talk about three things. Cassava itself is a crop which is very easy to grow. Cassava can be grown in an area where other crops cannot perform very well. Especially when you look at other crops like maize. Those crops which require a lot of input for them to be grown. Cassava can be grown without application of fertilizer. Yeah? Meaning that a farmer can grow cassava without applying any fertilizer. But look at these other crops and look at the cost of fertilizer. That's where cassava is having an upper hand. The other thing is, cassava now, we are not just looking at it to be a production crop or a crop to feed on. Cassava now is an industrial crop. A lot of industries are benefiting out of cassava. We hear of industries producing ethanol. We have an industry, we have a farm there in Kawambu, Sunbed. Very soon they'll be producing ethanol out of cassava. We have Zambia breweries who are already producing one of their clear beer brands, Igulaga, out of cassava. Then we have other companies which are producing starch, which they are making several other products out of cassava. So cassava now is a money spinner compared to even these other crops which have high input rates. With cassava with low input rate, able to get more money. And looking at the varieties that we have now, before most of our farmers had cassava varieties which would mature maybe at 2 years, 3 years. But this time we are talking of a variety that can mature at 12 months up to 16 months. Look at just this short range. Yeah. So farmers within this short period are able to spend some money.
Despite these advantages that this cassava has over other crops, I'm sure there are some of challenges that you have as Zari or as for cassava farmers. Would you highlight some of the challenges that these cassava farmers have when growing this crop?
Challenges are there. Yeah. Mainly the challenges that we have are challenges of disease and pests of cassava. Like we said, most of the cassava that our farmers, the cassava cuttings that our farmers have, they've had them for a long time. And with this climate change that we're having, you find that there's been proliferation of disease, proliferation of insects, you know. So we've had this challenge of diseases. Yeah? The major disease being cassava mosaic disease. That one has been a challenge. It's found in the whole of Luapula. How can we help the farmers? The farmers need clean planting materials. That's why we are there as a research station. What we need to do as a research station is to have a clean multiplication site. And working with our colleagues at ACCI, which is at Seed Certification Institute, where if we can have seed growers in all these districts who can have clean planting materials so that farmers who have materials that are diseased can access materials which are clean.
Despite all these advantages that we have seen over cassava, the question that begs answers is, are there any nutrition value in cassava? And we talked to a nutritionist at the Ministry of Health who will help us answer this question.
What we consume from cassava are basically the tubers themselves and also cassava leaves. So talking about the tubers, we can eat the tubers as a snack by cooking it. The tubers can also be consumed as a snack if they are dried and then they are roasted, you know, and they mostly in Luapula they are consumed together with ground nuts. The tubers themselves can also be milled into cassava meal, and this is the one that we consume as nshima. And what we have seen, I think mostly our people mix actually cassava meal with maize meal. So if it is consumed like that, it provides both macro and micronutrients. So in terms of macronutrients, we get cassava, we get carbohydrates actually from cassava. And then if we are consuming it as tuber, that's when we get actually carbohydrates. But if we are consuming it as a vegetable, that is cassava meal, like we call it here. I think here in Luapula province it is known as the katapa. So if you are consuming it as a vegetable, you can actually prepare it, cook it in oil, cooking oil or palm oil, or other people actually cook it, mixing it actually with ground nuts. So as a vegetable, cassava provides us with micronutrients predominantly. We get vitamins, which include vitamin C and vitamin A. We also get some minerals from cassava, which include the iron, calcium, and some traces of zinc. So when you look at it from that angle, you realize that cassava actually is of high nutritional value and would actually encourage our people to actually consume it like they were in the forms that I mentioned. As tubers, you consume it as a snack, then you can also eat it as nshima, then you can also eat cassava leaves as relish. And when you consume it as relish, it provides, I think, those micronutrients that I talked about. And when you talk about those micronutrients that I mentioned, these are nutrients that strengthen our immunity. And they are very important, especially for people with compromised immunity, like people with HIV, AIDS, and others who may actually be suffering from some chronic conditions. So that's the story about cassava, and would encourage actually our people to consume cassava. Of course, we would caution our people not to just consume it. There are some varieties that actually contain some toxins So mostly cassava must be processed before it is actually consumed in the forms that I mentioned.
In Luapula province, we have seen companies who are buying cassava and also growing cassava. Let us hear how these companies are working with farmers to promote this crop or to give market to the farmers that grow this crop.
The market for cassava was only Democratic Republic of Congo and the Bangweru swamps and few, used to cross to the copper belt, sure. But with the help of Musika is like the middleman between the big companies, I've mentioned, like Zonkai, Surya, and the Zambia breweries, and companies like ours, molesters, and other aggregators in Northern Province and the Central Province, even as far as Western Province. So, Musika came in this part of the country, Luapula, and identified the companies like Zambia breweries. Zambia breweries, they are using cassava for the what? For Eagle beer. And Musika came in and they identified companies to work with Zambia breweries as aggregators. And then after Zambia breweries, Musika also brought in Zonkai. They are in Lusaka, based in Lusaka, 7 miles. They are using the same cassava for ethanol. Ethanol, in 2019, 2020, we had a challenge of, COVID. So they helped us with the manufacturing of sanitizers and other products from the same cassava. And then the third company which came on board was Surya companies. They are them like Zonkai and Surya. The other ethanol will be, I'm told, will be used to blend it with the fuel like diesel. We're blending it, for the efficiency or for what? For proper function of our vehicles, which uses the same product, diesel. And then I know Mix Plus, they are in the manufacturing of starch. Starch, is used in especially meat products. Meat products, we know about Zambeef, and we know about the Temis and other companies which are involved in the processing of the same. Sure. Normally, as molesters, we've been buying like between 500 metric ton to 1,000, even 1,200 metric ton annually. And then the bottom line of the fact is that our local farmers here, we are unable to meet the demand of the cassava, which these big companies require us to also to meet their annual target.
So insightful there. Before I let you go, Mr. Serenge, what message do you have to cassava farmers? There would be cassava farmers or those that are already doing the farming.
The message to the farmers is that before we used to call cassava an orphaned crop. Yeah, it was a crop that had been neglected. Even in government circles, it was rare to hear of cassava. Even in research, cassava funds were very difficult to come by. But this time things have changed. Cassava is like gold. Yeah? Cassava is no longer an orphaned crop. Cassava is a parent. So let farmers come on board and they will enjoy the fruits in cassava.
We have come to the end of the program where we have been looking at cassava and how the crop is helping the people to earn a living. And today I was privileged to talk to Mr. Gerard Serenge, the researcher from Zambia Agriculture Research Institute, ZARI. Mr. Selenje, thank you for finding time to this interview.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, until next time, I was your host, Teddy Malonga.